on 6PR. Tony McManus.
A couple of weeks ago we were talking about memorabilia. We took dozens and dozens of calls from people who collect memorabilia, going back sometimes 40, 50, 60 years. Certainly a lot from the wedding with Charles and Diana all those years ago. Are we seeing the same again? Are people just immersed in memorabilia? What would it be like to be very close inside Buckingham Palace, inside the palace area, and actually working? You're exposed to all sorts of interesting things, I would have thought. You may have read today about a palace worker and the royal party that's going to be thrown on the 29th of this month, as there will be hundreds, presumably, right around Perth and the metropolitan area. Andrea Bromberger is a former Buckingham Palace worker. How good would that be? Hello, Andrea.
Hi, Tony.
When were you working at the palace?
I worked back in 2005.
In what capacity?
I was their store supervisor for their summer opening. They open the palace every year for the general public to come through and view the art collection and something special for the Queen.
How was that?
It was quite special.
How did you secure the role, Andrea?
I actually applied online for the position, and you go through an interview process. And they offered me the job. I went firstly for the retail assistant position, and they called me up and said they'd like me to come back and re-interview for the supervisor role. And I did that, and I was lucky enough to get the one job they had going.
You were living in London at the time?
That's right. I've been living in London for almost 8 years, and I've just returned home.
How did you know about the job? Did you happen to... What, do they advertise these things?
They do. The palace has a website, and they advertise positions in the royal household, and you apply online, and that's how the process goes.
Now, you spent, I think, 12 months or just over 12 months?
No, it was only just for the summer period. It was just over 3 months that I worked at the palace.
How do they pay?
No, there's a lot of perks for working at the palace, and
really?
salary. Yeah, there's quite a lot of, you're well looked after as staff, and the salary is one factor of your wages, and meals and other things are also included. So,
who does the cooking?
The royal household. You get weekdays, there's a 2-course hot lunch provided for all staff, and and on weekends there's other meals brought in, but there's numerous things to say, like the royal household cooks the meals. They have social clubs and events on for staff.
Fantastic. How many on staff, Andrea?
On the summer opening I was there, we had 40 staff in the shop that was inside the palace gardens. They also have other staff around the route of the palace in the galleries where all the artwork is. And there was about 100 of those staff. There's quite a few people employed through the summer opening. And
when it's time for you to have your meal, where do you go?
Where do we go? On the 29th, here?
No. When you're over there and you're working, where do you go for the meal? Do you sit in the store, or do you go?
Palace. They have staff dining room. So in the royal house, there's the royal kitchens, and you go through the royal kitchens and you choose there's a selection for lunch, and you choose what you would like, and then you go through to the dining room. It's obviously not the Queen's dining room, but it's the staff dining room.
Does HRH at some stage stick her head in the door and say, everything okay down here?
No, she doesn't.
Did you see any members in the time that you were there from the royal family?
Prince Andrew arrived on helicopter one afternoon that I was working there, and walked past him and just sort of nodded and said hi. That's the closest I really got to meeting any of the royal family.
Did they, the people with whom you were working, to have an Australian there, that would have been a little different, presumably?
There was a few Australians working there when I was there, so it wasn't quite so unique. But of course, most people working there are British. It's just there's a range of nationalities and people doing all different roles and all different jobs there.
Did we read that one of your jobs was to go in and make sure that there were no palace squirrels eating the chocolates?
That's true. Because I was the store supervisor, I was either on the morning or an afternoon shift. So if I was opening up the store for the day, my role would be to go through, and I don't know if you've ever been to the Palace in the summer opening, but
Yeah, not as close as you. Just stood outside with everyone else and taken a couple of pics.
Right. Well, my role would be to open up the Palace doors on the route, go through, check the route, and we had a shop inside the Palace for disabled access, because obviously they couldn't always access outside into the gardens. There was the shop there. And then, of course, I'd go out to the shop, and being in the gardens, it was a temporary structure. It was all on wood decking, and it was like a marquee sides and top. And, of course, the Palace gardens are full of squirrels, and they would love to get in and try and get to the chocolate. So of a morning you'd do a quick scan to check the chocolate and see if there's any nibbles or bites, or often you'd find they'd knocked over a chocolate display. Or one morning, actually, I went in, there was a squirrel that had like a bar of chocolate it managed to drag outside of the shop, and it couldn't quite work out how to get up the tree because it had it in its claws, and then it was trying to get up the tree, but of course it would drop it. So, yes, the squirrels definitely enlightened the day there.
Let's go back to the interview process. When you applied for this online and you're asked to go in for an interview?
That's right. I was given a phone call to say I'd been accepted, and what I had to do, the interviews took place inside the Palace.
Were you nervous?
I was really nervous, and considering it was at the Palace, I thought, oh my gosh, I will really have to dress up, and went out and purchased outfits for the interview. And there's a big mix of people, of course, who come for the interviews. They're done as a group interview. And I just figure I'm sitting opposite people, and, there were uni students and other retired people who were coming in, and I just felt I was so overdressed at the time. And it starts off, I say, with a group interview, and then you have individual one-on-one interviews. So it's a whole afternoon process that you're there for. And
when they said to you, well, we'll offer you this particular role, what did you think?
I was quite amazed that I actually was offered the job. And then, of course, when they asked me to come back and re-interview for the supervisor's position, I thought, I must have done something right. And I was, quite nervous at first coming back. And then, of course, when I went to the second interview, being told they only employ one person, whereas they're employing quite a few people for the first round, I was incredibly nervous because I thought, wow, 1 in 100 is not so bad, to get the job, but then just one position, I'm the only person, being interviewed. I thought that was quite nervous. So,
what was the reaction when you were there and you're dealing with a lot of the members, a lot of the visitors, of the public and visitors from all around the world? Do you think that there is still the enormous interest in the royal family, and people around the world, maybe 2 billion people, will watch the wedding on the 29th? Do you understand that?
Definitely. There's a lot of interest in the royal family, and I guess working there, people had been through the Palace when they came down to the shop and met us, and they were just completely in awe of the work and just being inside. And, the tourists came from all over the world. There's a lot of Americans that have a very big interest in the royal family, of course. There was other fellow Australians who came through. It was just amazing to see people really enjoyed it and were very interested. And that year I worked there was also that Charles and Camilla had got married. So, of course, there was a lot of interest in that then at the time, and we had special china and memorabilia that we were selling to commemorate their wedding. So it was very much, I can see how now the wedding taking place, in 2 weeks, is just, again, igniting the interest in the monarchy.
And all this is part of Her Majesty's, retail division? The money goes to where?
It's part of the Royal Collection. They use the money, actually I can't recall what they use the money for, but obviously they're using it as their own revenue.
Yeah. It'd be pretty handsome.
I guess it would be, yes.
What sort of, I don't know whether you've been sworn to secrecy, but in terms of turnover, a little business like that, what would that do something per day, per week, per month? There'd be retailers listening now to 6PR and thinking, wow, what a great little business that must be.
Off the top of my head, I really can't recall how much, and I guess it varied on the day. Of course, the weekends we would have more people coming through. Also, bearing in mind, I think that year also we had a lot of, we had the bombings in London just before we opened in the July, because we opened in the July, so we were quite aware of how that was going to affect the number of tourists, and people coming through the Palace, because we were obviously a high-risk area. But I remember, we had set targets for the day, and we met targets, but what they were, I really can't recall, I'm sorry.
Would it be £10,000 a day, would you think? More?
I really couldn't recall. Perhaps on a weekend, I don't know. I really wouldn't want to say.
Are you excited about the 29th? I mean, it's special. You've been so close. What are you doing for it?
We're having a party here at home. I'm having 11 girlfriends coming around for dinner. My husband's going to be the butler for the night. He's going to dress up. We've got some white gloves for him. And when our guests arrive, we've got some champagne and pre-dinner canapes they're serving. And then we've got the room set up, which is what was taken in the paper today. You probably saw the photo.
Yeah, did see a nice happy pic.
Yeah. So when we have dinner, while having dinner, we'll be watching, of course, the wedding on TV, and then we'll probably have a few games and throw the bouquet and do a few things like that and just enjoy it.
The number one point of interest, presumably for most people, certainly women around the world, is going to be what it is that Catherine will wear. Are you excited about what it's going to look like? Do you have any idea?
I keep changing my mind because I kind of think she goes with any sort of style. I don't know what she's going to wear. I kind of feel it might be very conservative. I sort of go through phases of it might be something quite long, fitted, say with maybe lace bodicey kind of, and I change on a daily basis. I am quite excited to see what she's going to wear because I think she's becoming such a style icon. It will definitely influence other brides in the future and what they're going to wear. So I am very interested to see what she'll wear.
And I just wonder whether it will be vastly different to what Princess Diana wore to her wedding, just to make that very clear distinction.
I think so, because Diana wore such a traditional dress and such a long train. When she got married, I don't think, I would assume Kate wouldn't wear something quite that traditional. I don't think that would be quite in her style. I mean, Diana's wedding was huge, wasn't it? It was a big, massive wedding, and they're saying it's going to be a lot more modern. It'll be scaled back ever so slightly, but of course there will still be a lot of pomp and circumstance that goes with it. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see on the day.
Do you think she is beautiful and will fulfil the role accordingly?
I think so. I think it also makes a difference probably because she's also coming from a different perspective as well, being a commoner and going into the royal family. She's seeing it from a different angle as well, so I think that will make a difference.
Well, it is a very exciting time for you, and you're going to have one of these great gatherings at home, and I know many people right across Perth will be doing exactly the same thing, and as I said, they're saying, and it's been put to Catherine herself, saying, are you nervous? There could be in excess of 2 billion people watching you get married. How would that be?
I know, very nervous. I'd be very nervous. I'm glad she's not taking the coach. I could just imagine taking the coach to the church, the open-top coach, and being all on your own, sitting in that coach with knowing the whole world is watching you.
And no one to hold your hand. You couldn't even scratch your nose.
Exactly. You just feel like you couldn't move. It would be a bundle of nerves.
It'd be just awful, but we think she'll do it really well. Do you think you'd ever go back, Andrea, and work? If you had the opportunity, if HRH or somebody from the office said, Andrea, for the time that you were here, the 3 months you were here, it was an outstanding job, revenue was up, we've never made so much money in the little cafeteria downstairs, would you come back and help us?
I would go back. I loved it. It's the best job I've ever had.
Great way to finish up, Andrea. We wish you well.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you for spending a bit of time with us. There you go, former Buckingham Palace worker, and you heard it. It's all going to be fantastic. What are you doing, if anything, on the 29th? You may not even care. I think everybody's going to have a bit of a squiz, though, aren't they?